Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. As always, this is your host, Stewart Kraintz. We have another great guest for you today. Before I introduce him, please be sure to like and subscribe and hit that little bell icon. We want to make sure that you don't miss out on any of the content, the messages, or the great guests that we're going to have on here for you over the summer and beyond. So, without further ado, I want to dive right in and introduce today's guest. He is somebody that I've gotten to not only know for a couple of years now, but have actually been in kind of like the Spike Lee seat, so to speak, some of the best seats in the house to see his growth as an entrepreneur and really doing the thing, y'all. We have people that come on the show and they talk about our mindset. They talk about getting yourself in the best position to succeed. But this is somebody who's actually out there doing the work. And because of that, he has built his business from the ground up. It is one of the best live DJ and entertainment businesses in the New England area. And it's not just me saying that, it's from his list of clientele that I am drawing from to say to you that Brenton Jenkins, who we are having on the show, DJ Onyx himself, and the leader and CEO of Vision Entertainment, is the man who walks the talk. I cannot be more excited to invite Brenton Jenkins on the show today. Thank you so much for being here, sir.
Well, that was an amazing introduction. So I don't know if I could top that, but thank you so much for having me on the show. Like I was just saying a minute ago before we started recording, I'm just really appreciative to have an opportunity to be on your show. And let me just first of all, before I continue, congratulate you on that, just with 65 plus episodes recorded already, and talking to a bunch of like-minded individuals, whether it's freelancers, whether it's entrepreneurs, whether it's whatever it is. I just thank you for having me on the show. I'm excited to get on here and just talk about entrepreneurship, talk about, go-getting, talk about anything that I can share with the next person that might be looking to either start up their entrepreneurial journey, or maybe they're smack dab in the middle of it and need a little bit of reinforcement and so forth. So, I just wanted to start off first and foremost by, saying you've done some awesome work. I've been listening to the clips. I've been listening to other, past podcasts and so forth. And I just hope that I'm able to drop some little bits of nuggets that people can grasp onto. So thank you again for having me. And I hope you also enjoyed your Father's Day over this past weekend as well.
Yeah, Brent, and I sure did. And I appreciate the kind words. And, you summed it up well. Like, this show is here to support people in creating the lives of their dreams. And it is why I wanted to have people like you on, because you are doing it. Like, you're actually building it. I met you really when you were in your most embryonic phase a couple of years ago with the business, and just watching you post your updates on social media and some of the amazing opportunities that you've had. I just knew you were a no-brainer. And honestly, this conversation's way overdue. I want to jump right in. Something I've been wanting to ask you. You've had some huge high profile wins recently. I know that you and your company have had gigs for the Basketball Hall of Fame, USA Basketball. I know Marcus Camby has hired you for one of his events. And for those of you who don't know, Marcus Camby is an NBA veteran, played in the NBA for something like 16 years, was one of my favorites growing up. Those are the things that people see on social media. Those are the things that people are like, wow, I want to do that. That's incredible. It's the same idea as seeing somebody posing in front of a Maserati. Can you speak into the actual work, though, that goes into place for creating opportunities like that for yourself?
That's a very good question, and a very good, kind of on-ramp, for us. And I think, that's, if anything, what I wanted to talk about during this conversation. And one of the most, we're going to talk about like whatever the keys are, everything, everybody's journey is going to be different. What works for myself might not work for everybody else. But, I think this is the thing that's pretty universal that you can take with you through your entrepreneurial journey or just through life, and that is consistency is key. And I can tell you, I would not have been able in a position to receive those jobs if it wasn't for just being consistent and, not burning any bridges, just always holding up a consistent level of work and honestly kind of creating a brand where people know to what to expect when they are hiring you and things like that. So that was really important for me. You just mentioned something about like USA basketball and stuff. I would say probably, that's the highlight of my year so far. Who knows, maybe it could even be one of the highlights of my career so far, having an opportunity to work with, USA basketball, FIBA, and that was an opportunity, if I'm being, pretty frank, just came out of nowhere and so forth. I didn't wake up or start off this year in January of 2024 expecting them to be one of my clients. But when they reached out, I was ready to answer and I was ready for the call. So just a little bit more of what I can say about consistency is one of the things that I talked to my contact person from USA Basketball. I asked them, I was like, hey, how did you guys find us? Because I've got a website. My SEO is not amazing. I don't shoot to the top of, the search engine or the top of the list when you type in Springfield DJs or anything like that, or Springfield entertainers or, whatever. But I asked my contact person, I was like, what, made you guys decide to reach out over the, I'm sure, other 10 other companies that show up before me? And they said, well, it was your resume. It was your related experience. And for those of you who don't know, I've also been working with UMass Athletics for going on 7 years now. So that's another opportunity, that when I was probably like 21, 22, 23, whenever it started, came out of nowhere. But I don't want to get too sidetracked from that. They were able to look at my resume, which to this point, I kind of thought on my website, I was just kind of arbitrarily updating that, and I was like, all right, well, this is a cool way to keep track of like kind of the things that I've been doing. Of course, I have like a separate list that, with all my bookkeeping that shows the events and the amounts and things like that. But I always thought I was just kind of arbitrarily updating it, and nobody would really care except for USA Basketball. They saw that and they saw the related experience. They saw my vibe that I was creating, the brand that I've been establishing now for, a little over 5 years and so forth. And I just ended up being the right person for the job. But I don't think that I would get it if it wasn't for the consistency, if it wasn't for me, trying to carry over like a level of professionalism to my events, carrying over a different aesthetic, carrying over different types of music, things like that. So I think that's what I would have to say, if that answers the question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you're nailing it. And the point I wanted to hear you make, if I'm being honest, is that you didn't start out getting that gig. You started
Yeah.
out doing smaller events over and over and over again and executing and delivering a quality experience in your case over and over, time and time again. I know you're a hoops head like me, so something that Damian Lillard once said in an interview that I listened to, he said, to make a shot in front of 10,000 people, you have to make 10,000 shots in front of nobody. And
Absolutely.
I'm sure this applies to you. And I guess what I would love to hear your thoughts on is, where do people get started, especially when it maybe that success, that big visible win, doesn't feel like it's ever going to come?
Mm. You know, that's a very interesting question on where do people get started. And, I have a little mentee of mine. His name is Taylor. He's been coming along to a lot of events of mine. He's been a huge help. Like he's just, aspiring musician. He's a college student going to school down in Maryland and stuff. So now I kind of only get him in the summers and the breaks and stuff. He helps me out with my business. But I would say, it's funny with him because, like I said, he's an aspiring musician. And I know a lot of musicians get into this kind of phase, or a lot of business owners in general get into this phase where they don't release the content they have because it's not perfect enough, it's not good enough yet, and so forth. And as a result of that, they end up just hoarding this music, these projects, this content, and so forth. And then by the time you go to release it, you're not even really fully in love with the project anymore. It's you've grown beyond that point, and so forth. So, I think the way that I want to relate it back is because whenever we're, riding back to or from an event, I always make sure to, talk to him about like what he's doing, what he's got coming up. And I always just kind of encourage him to just go ahead and stop, letting the red tape stop you, and then just put out your art, put out your content. And you've always got to start somewhere. And, I think that's where I'll kind of like relate it back to my business and how I've started. It's very easy for me to say a lot of the things that we're going to talk about in this conversation, I don't want to paint the picture that it was easy for me to do, because it's so easy for me to say now. And the reason that it's easy for me to say now is because I've known what I've wanted to do for a very long time, and so, it's kind of easy to be working towards like a goal or a project when you have that in mind. But, I would just have to say you have to get out there, and there's no experience. And forgive me, I don't know who, I've necessarily heard this quote from, but there's no experience like live experience, especially when you're talking about somebody like me or somebody in my position where I'm a DJ, where I'm responsible for entertaining people, where I'm responsible for being able to read the crowd and react. And maybe they like this song, but maybe they won't like this song. And sometimes, you play a song that honestly clears the dance floor, and that becomes like a learning moment for you and stuff like that, but there's no way for you to actually get that experience and unless you are getting live experience. So whether it's a service that you sell, I'm definitely a big believer in, not providing your services for free or something like that. But yeah, maybe sometimes your initial services or runs or practice runs, they do need to be at a free rate, or they do need to be at a discounted rate or something just to get that experience under your belt. And then you can really grow from there. Then you'll have a lot more knowledge but you'll know what your boundaries are. You'll know what your talents are. You'll know what you're exceptional at and what you need work with. And that kind of helps you like build your story. But the only way to do that is to be brave enough to put yourself in a position to fail. I know that's a tough thing for a lot of people. And I think that maybe that's ultimately like what we're getting at, like we're talking about, how do people get started, or how can they enter their name into the hat and stuff, like for consideration for whatever it is, whatever their service or product is. And the only way to really get there is by putting yourself out there and failing first, and then learning from those failures.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's all about getting reps, like getting
Yeah.
swings at the plate, getting opportunities to learn, as you said, and knowing that you will have moments where you play a song and it clears the dance floor, or you show up to a gig and maybe the promoter didn't really promote, and you're
Yeah.
DJing in front of nobody.
Right.
And choosing to not make that about you, and continuing to show up to do the work to the best of your ability to at least get the lessons from it.
For sure.
Is there anything else on that you'd want to add?
No, I'm not sure if there's anything that I would want to add. Again, I'm saying it like it's super easy. It's a lot easier said than done than just, hey, get out there and do whatever it is that you do. Because, on the flip side of that, if you get out there and do whatever it is that you do and you decide or find out that you low-key hate it, well, then you're just avoiding, driving yourself down the rabbit hole and so forth. So, I mean, I think that's one of the most important parts of it, is if this is a thing that you're thinking about or want to do, or, you have to actually get out there and get your hands a little bit dirty. Networking is a very big thing. I'm sure we could talk about that later too. But networking is a very big thing, and making connections, not burning any bridges, kind of retreading some of the things that I've already said during this conversation. But I think the best thing that you could do is really just bet on yourself, which again is a lot easier said than done. Believe in yourself, and if you fail, that's okay. I mean, I think we've seen like how social media has become over the years, and I'm really trying to start distancing myself from it. It's a thing that we've known that, controversy drives the algorithm and,
Mm.
things like that. And it can become like a very negative space. But I just think, with the space of social media being so negative, we internalize a lot of that negativity and so forth, when really, it doesn't matter what the next person thinks about us. It doesn't matter, if let's say, for example, I go out to an event, and I should be taking my own advice right now, because I'm super critical about, if I go to a performance and I'm like, oh, I don't think I did that well, and this and the third, the chances are there's probably like 40 people in that crowd that really dug it, and I'm just internalizing that. I'm allowing myself to get sidetracked and stop myself from then continuing to push forward this journey, to continue to push forward my brand, to continue to push forward, whatever it is that I'm doing, because I'm so afraid of what the next person might think. And I think that's something that everybody in life, it's not just entrepreneurs, can identify with that. Everybody has an ego to an extent. Everybody, wants to be well received, liked, things like that. These are just all things that are natural to human beings and so forth. I'll just end it right there.
Yeah, yeah. But it does take a certain level of courage to keep persisting.
For sure.
What has worked for you in maintaining that level of drive and consistency despite all of the failures, all of the moments where you've probably felt doubt?
That's another big, great question, and a big thing that I wanted to kind of talk about during this conversation anyway. And that's just having a great support system, whether that's like your family members, whether that's friends, whether that's a community that you meet online. And there's so many ways to make community now, you know, um, just with social media, the internet, whether it's going to be on TikTok, Instagram, we can even talk about, some of the experiences that we have been a part of together. Like, big shout out to Sabrina Suarez. We were initially met in her mastermind, and that was a community that I think one of our big focus points is because this was smack dab in the middle of the pandemic, and so it was very easy to sit around and do nothing, essentially, and so forth. And the thing that really pushed me in the group was showing up on time to the meetings, being accountable, having something to share with you guys, but then also taking and internalizing your stories, like figuring out how I could then apply that to what I'm doing, figuring out how
Mhm.
we can all learn from each other's mistakes and so forth, and things like that. And may end up preventing us from making those same mistakes in the future. But I'll say it's two things. It's definitely the community. I'll say it's definitely the fact that you hear a lot of entrepreneurs. There are people that are really deep into the game and stuff like that. And I'm not trying to say who's a real from a fake or anything. That's not for me to talk about. Community, I would say, is the biggest thing for me. Like, whether it's having, my parents have always had my back, whether it's having friends, whether it's having support groups like I was just mentioning with the mastermind, whether it's finding different groups on social media and stuff, different communities that you can be a part of. Um, and I think that's something that people that are moving forward can totally take advantage of, because that's not something that I took advantage of when I was first getting started off. But given those communities are a lot more accessible now. But to touch on a point that I was talking about earlier, when I said I didn't want to dictate between who is or isn't a real entrepreneur. But I know for myself, personally speaking, this is my baby. Vision Entertainment is my baby, and so forth. Before, I don't have a dog, I don't have any actual children right now, and so forth. So it's easy for me to say I can devote all my time and energy into something like this. But Something I will talk about real quick is I am a big time introvert, and that's funny to say. Being like a DJ, I'm responsible for like entertaining and talking on the mic and, getting the party started. And so like, that's not very, characteristic of a DJ. But um, the thing is, I end up pushing through a lot of those fears and stuff that I have. I end up pushing through a lot of those, oh, hey, maybe I don't want to go out and do this networking meeting or event and stuff because I know it's all in service of my baby and so forth, my business, so to speak. So, when it comes down to that, um, it's very easy for me to I should stop saying very easy because these things, these individual tasks themselves aren't very easy, but it's very easy for me to say like, hey, just continue to push forward and so forth. And I think a lot of good things will come from that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, I want to just kind of drill down on the piece you said about being an introvert
Yeah.
because you had me fooled, right? Just like in the spaces you and I have been in, just seeing you, light up a room, even just some of the clips I've seen on social media of you in your element, DJing a party, DJing an event, like you said, you get to turn something on for yourself. Is that something that you feel like is learned, or is it something that somebody can train if they find themselves to be more introverted on the scale? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's a very good question. I'll come in with the very good questions back to back to back right now. So I think, something like being an introvert is not something that's like a life sentence or something. It's not something that's going to keep you from locked down in this position and you won't be able to get above it. I think there's a lot of things that we can learn and I don't want to, because we are talking about just like entrepreneurship as a whole and so forth, and so I don't want to tailor it too much to my business, but I still feel like I have a lot to learn. Like that's
Mhm.
I have a lot to learn about the business side, or even if you're saying like, hey, I've been able to see your business explode and things like that over the last, whether it is 3, 4, 5 years. So yeah, I think just to go back to what I was talking about, I don't think that being an entrepreneurship is like a life sentence that caps you from reaching your full potential. I think there are definitely a lot of techniques and things that we can do to, maybe unlearn some of the introverted, qualities and characteristics about ourselves. Um, but again, like I can really uh, say that something that has broken me out of my shell a lot is just having something that I want to see succeed so badly. And that might not be the position that everybody's in. And I totally realize that. But for me, that has worked. It's like I want to see my baby succeed, or my business, my brand, this thing that I wake up every day and it's the first thing on my mind. It's the last thing on my mind before I go to bed. I want to see it succeed. And then in a lot of ways too, we're living like a completely different lifestyle from a person like that is working a 9 to 5, for example, and so forth. So, just what I mean by that is, I think every entrepreneur, once they find themselves in a position where it's like, all right, I really am doing this full time. Maybe, and no shade to anybody that has like a little side job or part-time job or something to keep the bills paid or anything like that, but something that I've thought about, like when I used to work at TD Bank. That was my full-time job out of college and so forth. And, you know, I left about 2.5 years like into my journey there. And like I just remember like waking up. It was like October, basically like November, and it's like, wow, I'm waking up and I don't have anything to do. I don't have any work. I don't have anybody like making the schedule for me. I don't have anybody telling me when I can and can't eat lunch. I was dressing in a suit every day. Now I'm, switching to joggers and more comfortable wear to get around and stuff like that. But if anything, like there's this hunger that turned up inside of me, and it's the realization that, hey, nobody's coming to save you, bro. Like if this is the lifestyle that you want to live, nobody's coming to save you. And just to tie this back to the introvertedness, uh, it then puts me in a position where uh, I have to I can't let the introvertedness stop me from achieving my goals, from putting food on the table for myself, for my family, for creating new opportunities for myself and for my business. So that gets into more networking opportunities. That gets into, being at an event and talking with other vendors and things like that.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about a lot of things that is very specific to my industry right now, but I think it could be applicable across that many different industries, whether it's like, you could say you're a baker, and you go to an event where you're showing your cupcakes and your cookies and stuff, but there's somebody, a few tables down that does like chocolate covered pretzels or something like that.
Yeah.
That's probably have like a lot in common. And, you're ultimately holding yourself back by not even just interacting with that person, by being introverted. So that's what I would really have to say is just my want for my business and my baby to succeed, far outweighs me being introverted and so forth.
Hmm.
Even though I definitely am that person. I definitely am getting out of doing a big like 250 person banger wedding, and I'm just like, all right, I'm gonna ride home in silence and allow myself to like, just de-stress,
Decompress.
right, and let the adrenaline flow down a little bit, and and then maybe who knows, maybe the next day, like, I am just doing a little bit of my own introverted thing, whether I'm choosing to watch a sports game by myself or catching up on a show or catching up on an article or a book or something like that. So I don't just to just wrap everything up, I don't think that the introverted, being an introvert caps you from really reaching your full potential. It can be definitely a barrier, but it's a barrier that, can easily be surpassed if you have the community to support you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you so much for your thoughts on all of that, because I think the way that we put ourselves in boxes with labels, like I am an introvert, or I am, awkward socially, or I have such and such a condition. Those are labels that we put on ourselves that we allow to shape how we view ourselves and really define like what we're capable of. And a lot of the times it's other people's ideas and thoughts and inputs that really, I think, color our perception not only of reality but ourselves. And in a lot of ways we use those labels to hold ourselves back from really even just getting started. And so I
Mhm.
appreciate you sharing that. Something that I did want to touch on, I know that you are a big proponent of mental health. You kind of hit on it a bit already with this talk on being an introvert. What has worked for you on your entrepreneurial journey in terms of seeking support that you need to keep you going? Because entrepreneurialism is not for the faint of heart.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm a big kind of proponent of, addressing your mental health and addressing it in the same ways that we address our physical health, with the way that we address our teeth, the way that we address like going in for a physical at the doctors and so forth. And I didn't always see it that way. I'm proud to say that I'm a little over like a year into my therapy journey, and that's something that has just been so big for me. I've been an entrepreneur for years now, like oh, well over 5 years. I was an entrepreneur before I recently just celebrated an arbitrary date, like 5 years at the beginning of this year in February and so forth. But I've been an entrepreneur for a lot longer than that and been trying to build a brand and a business. And sometimes, and not even to say like a therapist is a person that is an expert in like brand creation or is an expert in entrepreneurship themselves, but what they are is an unbiased third party person that can
Yes.
give you tools the tools. And let me just say, like, unbiased, because I hold in regard to what my parents say a lot. I love them. I look to them for guidance. I also look to them for reassurance at times and so forth. But at a certain point of time, and any entrepreneur will know this, any business owner will know this, um, a non-entrepreneur or business owner can't help you with certain things when it comes to your thought process of, thinking about how things are going to develop in the future. And I'm not saying that necessarily a therapist can help you with that too, but what the therapist has allowed me to do is get these feelings out in the open where I was probably previously bottling it up. And when you
Mhm.
previously bottle these things up, you know what happens, it eventually explodes. And it could be at a time that's like really inopportune. It could be at a time where it could be a big break or a big opportunity for your business, but didn't have your other personal things sorted out and situated. And so I just have become, over the last year, a big proponent of, if you can afford it, or if you have some type of health insurance that, can provide you with a licensed therapist, I totally recommend it, just because I know what it's already done for me in my life, and I'm still like going to continue on with the journey, and I know what it's done for my business, and just to give me like a place to vent. But also, you can also receive tools on how to manage your stress, receive tools on how to maybe potentially manage a client, a difficult client that you had
Mhm.
come, you know, uh, you don't know, not necessarily how you're supposed to address things and so forth. That's a big thing with entrepreneurship. A lot of these things, a lot of these problems that we have, are kind of happening to us for the first time. And there's no like, entrepreneurship book for dummies. Well, there probably is, but that explains to you how you're supposed to address this situation at this very moment with, this amount of characteristics on it right now. So I'm just like a big proponent of, shout out to my guy James. We've been building and working, and I would just have to say, you also have to be willing to do the work while you're in the sessions, be open, be honest, and I just think that has allowed my business to also flourish, because now I'm able to be open and honest with my clients, and it's just helped me really move forward.
Yeah. Oh, so true. And, you know, we've had other entrepreneurs on the show, and they've all said entrepreneurialism is not for the faint of heart. They've all said things like it's the single greatest personal development program you can put yourself through, because it's going to force you to work on all of your stuff, because
For
it's all
sure.
going to come up
It
over and
does.
over again.
It does. It does. And, we wear so many hats. We wear so many hats, just in terms of whether you want to call yourself the CEO or the president. And we're also HR, and we're also customer relations, and we're also customer retention, and we're also marketing and advertisement. So there's so many different hats that we wear. And if you're not able to, kind of keep it all together, to keep your personal life, because I this is something that we talked about before we got into this conversation, that inevitably, if you're an entrepreneur or a business owner or a freelancer or anything like that, your personal life is going to bleed over into the business, and vice
Mhm.
versa. Your business life will then bleed over into your personal life, and then your loved ones will be, well, hey, like, why can't you separate these two things? And even I'm not even saying like that's a thing that I have figured out yet. I will be transparent with the listeners and stuff like that. I love where I'm at right now and where my business is going and stuff, but do I have it all figured out? I absolutely do not. Kind of something that I mentioned on earlier. There's a lot of things for me to learn, whether it's, how to be better with my customers and my clients, how to put out small fires when they happen, how to put out large fires when they happen. I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, but that just kind of goes towards, like a little, other than having a support system, other than having like maybe a third party, unbiased person to talk to, like a therapist or something.
Brenton, I'm so glad you said that, because it's actually really important that people listening to this know that no matter who we look up to, no matter how high of a pedestal we put somebody on, nobody's perfect and nobody has it all figured out.
Yeah.
I mean, you are absolutely somebody for other entrepreneurs to look up to, especially in the DJ and live entertainment space. You are absolutely somebody that folks can learn from, both in the to do's and not to do's, but also just from you as a person and your story. And when we are looking up to folks, we often forget that they're human too. You know, like we talk about like professional athletes all the time. Our society in particular, I feel like, puts them, musicians and movie stars, up on this just impossible pedestal. And
Absolutely.
a lot of them, end up turning to drugs or have other issues because they don't take the time to manage their mental health. But I acknowledge you for just saying that you're a work in progress all the time, because anybody listening to this, no matter who you are, where you're catching this, be it Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, anywhere else, doesn't really matter. Like, you are both a masterpiece and a work in progress at the same time. So please know that, whoever you are listening to this.
Yeah. Well, that's a number one, super profound thing to say right there. The nugget that you just dropped to people, that you're a masterpiece and a work in progress all at the same time. And that's how I feel about my business. That's how I feel about Vision Entertainment. That it is a work in progress. That it is, it's almost like a mountain, or it's a pyramid that you're continuously, stacking and stacking and stacking. And you might not ever be done building, this pyramid. You might not ever be done building this business and so forth. There's always new things to learn. There's always new things to add into what you do. There's always new services that you can offer and things like that. So, but just what I was talking about, even if I'm going to go ahead and use that pyramid thing as an example, a pyramid is only as good as its base and its support system right there. So,
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's a great way to kind of put a bow on this part of the conversation as well, because another thing, like, no matter who you look up to, they have a support team in place. Like, your favorite influencer on social media has a team. Your favorite entrepreneur, your favorite athlete, your favorite musician, artist, whatever. Nothing great was ever accomplished alone. And so I'm really glad you put it like that. I'm actually going to quote you down the line. I've never heard it said like that. The pyramid has a strong base. So thank you for dropping that nugget on the listeners today. Brenton, we are starting to run short on time.
yeah.
But you are a fountain of knowledge, obviously are a very giving person in terms of your time, your energy, supporting other people, and learning from your wisdom. What is the best way for folks to get in contact with you so that they can continue this conversation off the podcast?
Yeah, definitely. The best places to reach me, is through email, and that's contact@visioneventsllc.com. But other than that, social media, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. My DJ Onyx account, I have two separate accounts and so forth, but one for the business, one for the DJ brand. But you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at official DJ Onyx. And then you can also find me on Facebook and Instagram at visionevents.ma.
Awesome. Awesome. And we will be sure, folks, to have all of Brenton's contact info made available in the comments, in the show notes, in the description of wherever you are catching this conversation. Brenton, this has been a really, really great conversation. I feel like we covered a lot of ground today. I wanted to ask you two more questions. First of which is that, we've talked a lot about entrepreneurialism, what it takes. Doesn't really matter what industry or product or service somebody wants to provide. We've covered that. But we also have talked about some of the mental health aspects as well. Just to round out this conversation, you clearly found the thing that you want to do, that you want to run towards, dedicate yourself to. What is your advice for people who know that they are destined for something bigger than maybe what they're currently up to, but maybe just don't know what that thing is yet?
Well, that's a great question. And it kind of speaks to some of the things that we've already talked about during this conversation. You know, whether it's there's nothing like live experience, number one. So it's getting out there, actually figuring out what it is that you like. You
Yeah.
know, you could feel like you have this like potential that's just ready to burst through, but if you don't have if you don't have an avenue or a place to channel that energy into, then it'll just continue to be like all sporadic and so forth. So it's definitely continue to get out there, mix it up, seek different opportunities. I would say the biggest one I would say is probably get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I know that's something that at this point I'm sure has become like a big cliche, or at least it's something that you and I have heard a million different times in the work that we do and so forth. But you really do truthfully have to get uncomfortable or get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that uncomfortableness, I don't even know if that's a word, that uncomfortability is what actually spurs on growth and change in your life and so forth. So I would say, yeah, continue to get out there, experiment with different things. And the last little nugget that I'm going to give on that is just bet on yourself. That is what and
Yes.
again, that's a lot easier said than done, but that's what I did. I was, like I said, working at TD Bank, and it wasn't like I had any, like a grunt work job or anything like that. They were grooming me in a lot of ways to take over like a manager supervisor position one day, like high up within the bank. Which, I'm sure if I had stayed on that path, I'd be doing very well for myself right now. I know the banking system in and out. I might even have be the manager of my own store or bank or a branch. That's what we call them and so forth. I might be, the manager of my own branch or something today. But, I was kind of sitting behind the desk or sitting behind the teller line, and I knew that my life was destined for something that was bigger. So maybe that's what you're talking about. It's a person that's sitting in a 9 to 5, like, oh, I know I can do something, so much better or bigger. And it's not even that it has to be better or bigger. It just has to be something that fulfills your life. And I know that what I do, whether I'm doing a wedding, and, I've just been with this couple from, basically inception to, now we're wrapping it up at the end of the night. And yes, they are a little tipsy, but they're telling me like, how great of a time that they had. And all of their family members are, ecstatic about the night and dance so much. And they're going to leave out of here with sore limbs and things like that. That's, a type of satisfaction for me that far exceeds like anything else that I was able to experience while working in the bank. Even if, it is very cool to be able to help people with their financial goals and things like that. I just know that this for me, and being an introvert and being a person, I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm a person that does not dance at all. You're not gonna, if I'm not, unless I'm behind the booth doing my little sidestep, like, two-step boogie, shuffle, whatever, kind of feeling, grooving along, dancing with the music. I'm not out there, on the dance floor and so forth. But like I said, I would just kind of like leave people with those three things. Is kind of like betting on yourself, getting out there and actually trying things and experimenting and figuring out what it is that you like and what you like to do. And being comfortable with getting uncomfortable is the last three nuggets I think that I would like to leave people with. And if that's something that they've heard on your podcast over and over and over again, well, then I'm sorry for repeating it, but it must mean it holds some type of weight if I'm saying it and a few other folks have said it as well. So, I think anybody's capable of living out their dreams and doing what they love and getting what they, because this is maybe the last thing that I'll say about it. We really only have one shot at this life. We only have one shot to, live the lifestyle that, we want to live. And that doesn't mean anything like, oh, if you're, 20 years into your career, you can't pivot from there. But I think what I mean by that is just we only have one shot to try to go for the life that we want to live, and so I think I'm willing, and I have shown at this moment in time that I'm willing to bet on myself, that I am capable of achieving that, but I absolutely would not be able to do that without my awesome support system. And so if you guys do not have a support system, like I said, there's so many different ways to, in this day and age to reach out and get that community, whether it's through social media, whether it's through networking groups or chamber of commerces around town, whether you kind of have to start off when your family is your support system and so forth. And just a quick little disclaimer about that, you might have to fight back, against your family members that want a little bit different for you or want you to take a different path. I just do have to give a disclaimer about that because your family does want what's best for you, but then also it's just understanding about what is best for you as the individual, as the person, as the aspiring entrepreneur and business owner.
Yeah. No, absolutely, man. And so good. And it was so good to have you on today. And folks, we are going to have to bring this to a close, but be sure to connect with Brenton offline again at official DJ Onyx. And definitely are going to put his email in there below so that you can continue the conversation with him, bounce some ideas off, and really just learn more about what he's up to and possibly get support with your entrepreneurial ideas. Brenton, the very last question I ask everybody on this show, you're no different. Wanted to ask, what are you acknowledging yourself for today?
What am I acknowledging myself for today? Wow, Stu, first of all, let me just say, it's been an honor and a privilege to be a part of your podcast today. Thank you for having me on again. Incredible questions, very insightful and it's made me think a lot. And even your final question is making me think a lot. I'm acknowledging myself today for choosing to get up again and fight the good fight. That's what I would say, and every day, I hope this doesn't make it sound too much like, I'm battling some demons and stuff like that. But, I choosing to get up and fighting the good fight is, again, another thing that's like easier said than done. And I'm just thankful for another day and another opportunity to help me live out my dreams and build this conglomerate that I want and build the business, build the baby up that I have been, putting all my time and effort into over the last, 5 or so years. People that know me know it's been a lot longer than 5 years, but we could just say that as a little placeholder for right now. So
I love it. Well, Brenton, thank you so much for being here today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. And I know that the folks got something out of this conversation today, just through who you be, the way you give selflessly, the way you explain things vulnerably, and from a place of humility that I think that in this social media world that we're all craving, just real connection, real people being like, hey, I'm doing really well. There are also some things that maybe I can continue to work on, and knowing that you're not going to take your foot off the gas either. And so, on behalf of the show and the listeners, you've had some great successes, and this is also just the tip of the iceberg for you. Sky's the limit.
I think so too. Here's to 65 more episodes of the podcast, and I hope you can help hundreds, thousands, if not millions more people in your journey to success as well. So again, thank you so much for having me on today, and getting my thoughts going and provoked with very provoking conversation, and I appreciate you, Stu. So thanks for having me on. Wish you all the best of luck with the podcast and your other business endeavors. And I hope the family is well too.
Thank you so much, folks. Again, this has been another episode of Your Inside Track to Success. Please share this with somebody you know if you got any value out of today's conversation. And I know you did. Again, cost of admission is free. So it's just the teeny little thing that we ask for so that this show and people like Brenton can continue to share their message as far and wide as possible. We'll be back next week with another amazing guest and or message. We'll see you there.